Welcome to the FNO Insurtech podcast, a place where movers and shakers from all points within the insurance ecosystem gather and discuss all things Insurtech. We talk about how technology and innovation are affecting and driving change in the industry. Here are your hosts, Lee Boyd and Rob Beller.
Hey, podcast world. We have a special edition.
We do.
We have an amazing guest.
Amazing guest. We don't have any special year-end treats or wisdom or knowledge, but we do have a great guest to end your with or start your year with, depending on a podcast hiatus.
That's right. Depending on when you listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, we have back with us. This is another
Number
contender.
2.
This is another contender for the FNO Insurtech smoking jacket.
Mm-hmm. Should we keep saying smoking jacket
Why?
this day and age with, health and cigarettes and all that? I mean, is that still where we're going for the smoking jacket?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a smoking jacket because that's what the garment is called. It has nothing to do with smoking. That's what it's called.
Oh, it's like a brand, like a thing,
No, it's
like a
style.
moccasin.
It's like a style, like bell
Like a
bottom,
shoe?
like high heel shoes or bell bottom pants.
My bowling shoes.
Smoking jacket is a descriptive style.
I didn't know that. I
Well,
thought it was like a
Lee,
1970s.
Lee, you're born,
thing.
raised, and lived your entire life in Waco, Texas. So everybody understands.
We have jackets. I don't know.
That's right. You have in Waco. There are jackets. That's true.
We call them coats, but I don't know.
You call them jackets because everybody has one, right? But there's other places in the world where they differentiate jackets between different styles of jackets. And in some very, very intimate places, they have what they call smoking jackets.
Okay.
Which are
like at a country club.
It's actually lounge wear.
Oh my goodness. I do not have any lounge wear.
I
got a pair of warm-up pants.
Made most famous by Hugh Hefner.
Oh, it's like his pajamas.
The founder of Playboy magazine. Yeah, right.
Can we start giving out FNO pajama pants?
No, Lee, no, we're not going to do that. No.
I feel like I really derailed this.
You took it in a whole different direction.
And I apologize. That's on me.
So I have to give a real quick shout out to our good friend Andy Cohen, who sent us a little note about our 200th episode.
He did.
And he said, that's so great. He says, I don't think there's anything I've done 200 times in my life. I laughed out loud when I read that.
I did too. I thought that was really nice.
And when I thought about it, I thought, gosh, you know what? He may be right. This might be the only thing I've done 200 times.
I have quit 200 things more than I've done 200 things.
I doubt that. You're an Eagle Scout, man. Eagle Scouts don't quit anything. That's the whole point of being an Eagle Scout.
That's finish what I did make that. I got a whole thing here. Like all these papers are all things I started and haven't finished yet, but not the podcast. We've done the podcast.
I'm sitting here jibber jabbering. I have people waiting to talk to me.
Well, you're very important.
No, I just have people waiting to talk to me. They're not. It has nothing to do with my.
I hope they don't yell at you. Why don't we jump back on the rails here and let our audience know about the podcast?
We have the one, the only, our good friend Adam Kostecki. Can we call him a good friend? I think so.
I feel like he's our best friend right now.
Well, our good friend Adam Kostecki is back with us. We asked him to come back for one reason, and that is to talk about innovation teams and what they are. And for those of you who are trying to sell to innovation teams, you'll find this interesting. For those of you who are on innovation teams, you'll find this interesting. For those of you who are trying to sell to carriers, you'll find this interesting.
For those of you breathing, you'll find it interesting.
Oh, wow. You went all the way there.
Well, he gives us a look behind the curtain.
That's what we invited him. The confessions of a corporate innovation leader. And we went back to that scene in Wizard of Oz where the Toto gets away from Dorothy and runs down the hallway and pulls the curtain back of the Wizard of Oz. And we see that all it is this little old man pulling levers and pulling ropes and whatnot.
And we wanted to know, is that what goes on?
What goes on? What really goes on? And Adam does a great job. You'll love this. So why don't you introduce us? Why don't you take us there?
Well, so here's our second interview with Adam Kostecki, founder and principal consultant of Insurtech Innovations.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to our second episode, the companion episode of our interview with the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend. Adam Kostecki is back with us today. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Rob. Hey, Lee. It's great to be back. Congratulations on your 200th episode.
Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
You know, when I came on before, I thought there was a chance I might be on the 200th episode, but
there was.
It's not. I'm not. I don't rise to that level of importance.
Well, you do. It just wasn't in the cards.
Actually, Adam, truth be told, is I just got your check in the mail today.
Perfect.
So that's why, if it would have been here,
we can actually go back and change it.
When we recorded it, you would have been in. In fact, all the people who paid to be on the 200th episode were on it. So altogether, that was 4, 9, 17. Nobody.
Nobody.
Nobody paid. But we did get one note from somebody congratulating us, and it said, "That's really great. I haven't done 200 things in my life with anything."
Yeah, that would make
I haven't
me
done
laugh.
anything 200 times. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I mean, you guys, I tell you, you're quite the voice of the industry here.
Oh my God, yes. Oh God, yes.
You know, I'm honored that you'll have me on again. I have no idea what we're going to talk about here today. I think the last episode,
that makes 3 of us.
I told you my life story, so I don't know
good.
Much more in the well here. So
this is going to be a good one. This is going to be a good one. We're gonna peek behind the curtain.
Ooh, I like that. I see Wizard of Oz. I see that one scene where they're walking up to the wizard and the little dog runs up.
The innovators behind
Toto runs up and pulls the curtain back. And there's the wizard pulling the levers and pulling the rope. And
he's so unimpressive. They're so disappointed, aren't they?
It really is. It's such a shame.
But it's not going to be anything like that today because we have Adam Kostecki with us. Adam, formerly longtime Amica guy. Now out on his own, blazing a trail in the industry. We posed the question to Adam, what if we did a podcast about what it's like to lead innovation at a major insurance company in the United States? Something Adam has a lot of information about, a lot of know-how, a lot of experience. So that's what we thought we'd do today. So welcome to our episode with Adam Kostecki of Confessions of a Former Innovation Officer at a major insurance company in the United States of America.
You know, I'll just lead it off. I got to give somebody out there credit here. This guy, Mike Liebor at Insurance Gig. At a conference, he was pitching to me his idea about new Insurtech venture he's working on. And he previously led innovation at an insurance company. And he sat there and said, hey, you know what leading innovation at insurance is like? He's like, it's the same exact job as being head of nutrition at Haagen-Dazs ice cream. You're constantly swimming against the tide and, dealing with resistance at pretty much every angle. And I just sat across from him and I burst out laughing and said, man, that is a good one. That is absolutely true.
So is it? Is that true?
Yeah, is that right?
Let's start at the end and work our way backwards.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the whole purpose of insurance companies is to eliminate risk, identify and eliminate and minimize risk. And necessarily innovation involves risk and trying to do new things, trying to do different things. And I think just inherently you end up with a lot of conflict. You know, and one of the key things I learned through running innovation at an insurance company is that inertia is a very powerful force. Companies want to continue what they're doing and optimize 10%. That's really what we call the core innovation, right? It's identifying with current customers and current products, how to streamline processes, how to improve efficiencies.
Yeah. Whenever you're in that space and you're working on these innovative ideas, who's coming up with the need? Who's coming up with the thing that needs to be fixed, right? Is that the innovation team or is that somebody at a higher level? Like who's coming up with that?
Do you have a bunch of people running to you from all over the enterprise saying, hey, how about this?
Yeah, I got a problem. Can you fix it? Or is it you telling them that they have a problem?
I think it comes from a lot of different directions. A healthy innovation ecosystem at an insurance company has many different stakeholders. And certainly some ideas do get incubated and generated in the innovation team. Many ideas do come from the front lines. Ultimately, when it comes to incremental innovation, the people on the phones often have the best ideas and the best solutions to some of the problems that need to be solved. Certainly business unit leaders identifying, clear problems or clear opportunities within their business units to drive efficiency is another source. Like that becomes some of the criteria we use to evaluate new ideas and ideate. Another place where, the problems or the opportunities come from is just external scanning. And, with Insurtech, there's so much activity happening in the market. There are so many new ideas, so many new components, that are out there enabling technologies that it's really up to the innovation team to see some of those capabilities as they're first emerging and really to start thinking about how they could help drive value at the insurance company. But I think the most valuable problems to be solved are really core problems in insurance. And it's around, having access to good sets of data that helps from a risk selection perspective or helps more accurately price premiums, distribution strategies that allow you to reach those key targets and, lower costs in acquiring new customers. And then certainly around the claims process, optimizing the claims process, improving the claims experience, and, improving accuracy of indemnity are key areas that I think every insurance company looks for solutions in.
So at the C level, let's start there. I'm sure you had interaction with the C level.
Yes.
They probably had tremendous interest in what you guys were doing, what you thought, what was possible and what wasn't, what was a fantasy and what could be a reality. But what did you learn about that? What does the C level think? What's on their mind vis-a-vis the innovation team?
That's a good question, Rob. And I would say it's going to be different at many different companies, depending on what are some of the key priorities within the organization, whether they're growth focused or profitability focused. But, I think in many cases, there might be a disconnect in what they want innovation to do versus really what they need innovation to do. And, many times it's the shiny object. They want to investigate some of the latest capabilities and technologies because they see other companies adopting it. They don't want to be left behind. But many times those aren't solutions to key problems that really need to be solved at the company.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think
but rather a distraction even.
Right. And that's where some companies, and it's not just in insurance, but some companies go afar when it comes to innovation. That's more of the innovation theater, right? Mm-hmm. And, I think it's necessarily a part of what innovation needs to do to stay on top of all the trends and have a good understanding of that. But I think most importantly, innovation needs to be able to make the connection with those enabling technologies and really key problems to solve inside the industry. And at a company level, that's totally driven by the relationships you have in the C level and at the business unit level. And you know what? I'll tell you, it requires those business heads and the C-level folks to be clear on what are the problems that need to be solved. And sometimes they may not have that level of awareness.
I'm sure that sometimes you've maybe heard somebody say to you, in so many words, of course, why don't we do this? Or why don't we try this? And you must think to yourself, of all the things in the world, how could you come up with that?
Well, and this is a technique we would use in innovation. It's called the 5 whys, right? When somebody would come with a solution, you'd ask them why. They'd give you an answer, and then you ask them why again until you're 5 whys deep. And by the time you hit that 5th why, you should be at an interesting insight. Many times you would get 2 or 3 whys deep, and then the answer you get is, well, because.
Right.
And, that's where you really need to be focused. And, you need to make sure that when it comes to those just because, either there's a pet project or someone, for whatever reason, trying to advance an idea, that, again, may look good from the outside, but may not have a lot of value on the inside.
But isn't it kind of tough if a C-level person says, hey, we need to do this, to say, no, we don't?
It's very, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And that's, we often, there's a couple different approaches, right? When it comes to saying no, there are a couple different ways to do it. Everyone knows of the innovation technique, yes, and it's a technique that's often used in improv, and it keeps it keeps you expanding on ideas. We had a variation that was very much around yes, if. And understanding that innovation teams are often committed to many different projects, have limited resources, and someone just comes midstream outside of planning cycles with an idea, you would often respond, yes, if. Yes, if we didn't have to spend time on this other idea. Yes, if we had additional resources. Yes, if there was a clear business problem behind that, or clear business case around bringing that solution forward. So sometimes that yes, if conversation really helped to tease out some of the limiting factors around why you can't do everything, and also get to why that might be a good idea to move forward with.
Sometimes I look at innovation teams and I think project management. I think that some innovation teams are out there to implement projects and make sure the entire organization is doing it. How does an innovation team keep innovating and not become just a project management team?
Well, and I would say that's another misconception about innovation teams, right? Innovation isn't necessarily about implementation.
Right.
We would have a saying that innovation is not idea daycare. You don't just come down and drop an idea off and then pick up something at the end of the day without investing your own time and hard work. And again, most of these innovation teams are staffed with different types of roles, business designers, strategic designers, customer researchers. They can really help bring an idea to life, or bring a concept to life, that then you might pass off to another business unit or work in concert with a business unit to develop. But then when it comes time to project manage and implement, that's not necessarily the best use of innovation resources. You need creativity. You need certain types of resources that don't exist in other areas of the company. And there are plenty of people that can develop a project plan and, create a straight through implementation of an idea. The challenge is sometimes the things that are implemented aren't the things that are going to bring value. And that's where the innovation team really helps larger organizations.
So if you want to be Adam Kostecki 6 months ago and you want to lead, where do you enroll? What course of study do you enroll in to become the head of the innovation team? How do you get there?
You learn by doing. In many cases, it requires a lot of grit and perseverance, right? Innovation is inherently challenging. And sometimes everyone talks about failing fast and failing quick. And that is important. But some things that you work on, things can fail for many different reasons. It's important to reflect back on why something failed before you just abandon it. And if it failed because of lack of resources or lack of business unit support or wasn't implemented properly, the MVP approach that you took was too narrow, that might not be something that you should just move on from. You may want to go back and say, hey, we got to try that again with a different spin. So I think learning from experience and learning by doing is key. I mean, certainly there are MBA classes and certain schools that have innovation-focused programs that you can learn more like an MBA.
Oh, really?
But,
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think Northeastern has a pretty strong program in innovation. Again, it's really, I think, at a fundamental level, it's about understanding the business that you're in, having great relationships across the business, and understanding, in many cases, how to navigate some political interactions.
Being on an innovation team, is that something that can be done long-term, or is it best to cycle people in and out to get fresh perspective, fresh ideas, or can somebody be on the innovation team for a long, long time?
it's interesting you bring this up, but I recently read an article or there's an opinion out there that you can't necessarily be successful in the long run in an innovation team. Because again, if you're ambitious enough, if you're taking on very risky ideas, you're going to fail a lot.
A lot,
So
yeah.
if you're in that team for a long term and you're failing a lot, you start to build that type of reputation. So I think when it comes to cycling folks in and out, I think that's a very powerful part of the innovation model. It helps keep that fresh perspective on what's happening in the business. But there are certain roles you do need, supportive roles that you do need in innovation that do really require long-term commitments. Things like customer research. You're going to be doing customer research over a long period of time, and it's formative. So every time you do a research effort, you're learning a little bit more and creating a stronger foundation. And you don't want to be switching out customer researchers every couple of years, or because it doesn't allow for that generative approach. It doesn't allow ideas to really build on themselves and pivot as the need approaches. But I do think on the business side, having fresh talent and fresh ideas from the business is a very important component to healthy innovation teams.
Would somebody reach out to you and say, hey, can you audit our innovation team or audit our innovation process?
I think I could certainly look at the components that are in play, whether it be from a resource perspective, leadership perspective, process, stage gates in between. And I could certainly look at, and through some different stories, be able to provide suggestions on changes they might be able to implement to help improve their innovation process. Sure.
You are now starting out on a new adventure, right? And that adventure is, tell us a little bit about that.
It's Insurtech Innovations. It's a consulting and advisory service to help on the supplier side as well as the carrier side implement new ideas and create new value for the organization. Many times, as I said before, with startups, they've got some interesting technology, but they don't necessarily have the understanding of insurance and what are the key use cases. So helping to refine that pitch or refine that idea, create a product that's really tailored for insurance, that's something I can certainly lend some perspective on. I have deep experience in the property claims area. And, whether it be identifying opportunities for efficiency in property claims or providing new capabilities through direct repair or other expert networks to streamline the process, I've done that in the past. So, and again, I follow a lot of what's happening on the Insurtech space, and I can give a unique perspective there.
Is there a club, a secret cabal of innovation people that's lurking somewhere behind this curtain that we're trying to pull back today?
Yeah, there is. And every meeting starts off saying, hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an innovator. And it's all these sad faces in the room. You can tell everyone, shouldered a lot of burdens, but
it's usually in the rec room at a church.
Yes, in the basement, Innovators Anonymous.
Bunch of people smoking.
We can't talk about it outside the room. So no, there isn't, Rob.
What happens in the room stays in the room. Well, but no, you go to a conference. Do you seek out, is there a group? I mean, do you have friends who had similar positions to yours with other carriers?
Yeah.
And you guys would sit and hand each other Kleenexes back and forth and cry or what?
Yes. And it's like they're talking about their problems and they're the same exact problems as yours. Yeah. And it's not just limited to insurance innovators. I think I may have mentioned this on maybe the first podcast I was on here, but there's a firm out of Boston called Innovation Leader. They help corporate innovation entrepreneurs across every industry. And they had some of the best innovation-focused events across the country. They generally did not include PowerPoint-type presentations. They were more whiteboard sessions. Sometimes it was uncomfortable. You go into a relatively small room and you're expected to contribute. You're expected to bring your problems to the table as well. But I learned so much from those events. Mm-hmm. And, ultimately the same things that are happening or the challenges in innovation in insurance are the same across other industries.
And that must be because, I'm guessing, just human nature. It's the human nature issues and problems. It's not like, do we need a chat bot to do this thing in this particular product line, but rather, how do we get everybody on board, or things like that? Is that what it is that unifies it all? Is the fact that there's people doing this?
You know what? It's not human nature, it's corporate nature, right? And corporations, especially old ones and ones that have been around for a while, have established very healthy immune systems to identify something new, to isolate it, and to eliminate it. And those are the corporate antibodies that are the antithesis to innovation. Just like the human immune system, it's designed to identify different things. It's designed to tell you all the things that are wrong with it and why it won't work, because the organization's filled with experts. They'll tell you every time something's not going to work.
Right.
And,
Isn't that so true?
It might.
Isn't this why you'll say, what do you say? You say that culture eats.
Yeah, I mean, that's a common phrase. Culture eats strategy for breakfast or for lunch. I mean, I say it eats strategy for breakfast. It eats change management for lunch, innovation for dinner, and digital transformation for dessert. It's all about the culture and having an open culture and people that are curious. Intellectual curiosity is huge. Whenever we would have people that would say, oh, this is never going to work, we've tried that before, we would always say, you know what, let's shift the conversation and just imagine for a minute we're talking about a theoretical conversation. How might we?
Yeah.
And when you ask that question, how might this work? What would have to be true in order for this to work? Mm-hmm. It gets people's minds thinking differently.
Sure. Plus, it brings them onto your boat instead of keeping them off of it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And again, it's, hey, let's just spend a few minutes thinking about how this might work. Mm-hmm. Or what would have to be true. Now you're going to come up with the response to that are going to be the key assumptions that you need to test and prove throughout your early investigations so that you can come back and say, hey, see, this is going to work because X, Y, Z.
So these meetings that you had really became an exercise in how do you deal with the people? How do you deal with the corporate culture to get our ideas, to get our real work that we're trying to do? How do we keep it from being encapsulated, trapped, and eliminated? Was that really the focus of these things?
Yeah, I mean, alignment and, not necessarily consensus building, but alignment, I think, is really important. And by the way, that's not something you can really do from the bottom up. It requires strong leadership at the top with clear priorities and budget behind it and resources that aren't going to go away at the first sign of trouble for the business, that are going to endure. That is something that I think leadership plays a really big role. And, in some business units, they might think, the innovation team isn't connected enough to our business. We can do this on our own. And that just creates a rift. And then it becomes, competitive. Yeah. And so many innovation teams fail because of that type of approach, not aligned on leadership and not aligned on resources, and trying to move a lot quicker than really you should at certain points.
What do you do whenever you come up against a coworker who is just super negative, not willing to budge, doesn't want anything to do with innovation, but yet you're being asked to kind of innovate within that group or that organization that they work? I mean, what do you do? Do you go to your boss and say, it just won't work? Or do you try to use some people skills?
I mean, I think having influence from above is really important in that situation, right? You don't want to go to your boss every time you're dealing with a negative Nancy. But in certain circumstances, sometimes you do need to have those behind the scene conversations. And ultimately, innovation is all about, trial and error.
Yeah.
And, the key thing is to have an established process when it comes to innovation that you can point back to. And when people say, hey, let's do this, or why isn't this working? You go back to it and you say, well, this is where we are in the current process. Right. We're not just going to jump into launch and scale. We haven't hit the pilot milestone, or we haven't hit the prototyping milestone. And, when people come out with just an idea that hasn't been researched, you say, well, research is part of the innovation process. So where was the research done on this idea?
Yeah.
So do you try to take everything through that? I mean, I would assume I kind of see it on a workflow on the wall or on a diagram or a framed, something in a frame that says, here's our process and we're going to follow this on every idea. Is that what you try to do?
It depends, right? Some of the core innovation that happens, the incremental innovation that's very close to the business, it doesn't need to go through all those cycles. But the longer term efforts, the efforts that are really rooted in identifying new customer needs, they should go through those key steps along the way, because what you do is you take out people and you take out personalities and you talk about where we are in the process, what we've learned, the KPIs or the assumptions we've demonstrated, and it really reduces it to a more of a mechanized process where you're looking at data, not opinions, and then you make decisions that are based on that.
I would like to talk a little bit about these startups who come to you and these people with these ideas. They want to change the world and they're coming to you and they're either talking to you about it or trying to get your advice. And I'm just wondering, I mean, when people come to me with their idea, I might not need it, but I don't just want to send them on their way. I want to invest in them and I want to help them. But yeah, you must get pitched all the time. I mean, tell me about that relationship. How do you not get so invested in somebody that it takes up all of your time? Or are there times where you just have to say, thank you for the idea, move on? I mean, talk about that.
You can spend a lot of time scanning the external ecosystem and looking at different solutions. I mean, I'll tell you, there are certain categories in insurance right now that are extremely noisy, and there's many different providers trying to now compete upon the success of a few prior entrants that have been very successful. And, from my perspective, I like meeting new people. I like hearing the pitches and seeing what's interesting. But to be honest with you, the industry, the auto insurance industry, doesn't need another smartphone UBI solution right now.
Right.
And, like when people come to me with those concepts, sometimes you just have to relay that back and say, unless you've got something that's totally different here, the headwinds are going to be so difficult for a small company entering this space. Mm-hmm. On the property side, it seems like there's so many companies that are now using AI to process aerial imagery and create attributes on property around risk. And there have been a few that have done it very well. But you know what? It's an extremely hard area now to get into. What a lot of these companies don't understand is, hey, you might be able to come up with that new risk factor based on analyzing the aerial imagery, but you're going to have to file that in 50 different states in order for insurance companies to be able to rate the policy based on it. Mm-hmm. And you're going to need the actuarial studies and whatnot to demonstrate that out before your clients are going to be able to use it.
It's not so easy and quick. So I'm interested to follow up on Lee's question. We're interested in that connection between Insurtech and innovation. I think for many of the casual observers of innovation, like ourselves, when you talk to an innovation person from a carrier, you automatically think about, how many Insurtechs have you vetted this year? Stuff like that. Talk about that link between the Insurtech world and an innovation team.
Again, I think it falls in the category of that external scanning and being cognizant of what's happening in the industry. These startups can be a great source of information from a competitive intelligence perspective to understand what other companies might be working on and where there might be some value that you haven't seen. But ultimately, you've got to connect them back again to a key problem at your business that needs to be solved.
Right.
And again, some of the providers out there that offer these no-code solutions, you look at the demos and like, wow, this is so cool. But then you sit back and go, but I'm not trying to spin up a digital brand in a week. And I'm not trying to deploy this brand new insurance offering that doesn't exist right now. So while it's great that it can be done, that's not a problem that my organization is currently having right now.
I mean, it must be something that an innovator, though, has to deal with all the time, is being barraged by Insurtechs, because I'm sure other people in the organization that they reach out to are pushing them in that direction. You know who you really need to talk to? You really
Right.
need to talk to the innovation team.
Well, and a good innovation team will act as the conduit, right? And will act as that first filter to say, yes, this is interesting, or no, it isn't. And then secondarily, on the interesting ones that have potential, they'll make connections within the organization with folks that will be interested, right? They can broker those introductions to the business unit leaders that have problems that could be solved through that platform.
How does somebody on the innovation team stay organized? Because you've got all these current ideas that you're working on, all these new ones, all the water cooler talk of people with new ideas. I mean, how does someone stay focused and organized?
I think it just comes down to, for the most part, having good time management skills and just good organizational systems overall, whether you use Outlook and task management or whatnot. I think on an organizational basis, there are great platforms out there that can help to do things like prioritize ideas in different ways. And that can help from an organizational perspective, try and get to some of the key ideas. I mean, that's another misconception, is that people think they need more good ideas. And the reality is you already have all the good ideas that you need within your organization. You just need to find the most valuable ones, and you need to find the ones where the business unit is ready to deploy. And, that's how you're going to extract some value.
So I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm thinking to myself, are you guys really about innovation, or are you really about just helping the org clarify things, right?
It depends on where the other capabilities are in the organizational structure. Often corporate strategy departments are there to really identify and focus the organization in on key opportunities or key initiatives. And in those cases, innovation might play a lesser of that role. In organizations without those strategy departments, innovation can definitely help when it comes to identifying what's the key next thing to do. And by the way, like a lot of what we're talking to applies to incremental innovation. But when it comes to the adjacent innovation and the disruptive innovation, that's where a good innovation team will be in the lead and starting those efforts. They'll be seeing the trends happening externally, running the pilots to see what works. And then when things are ready, introducing them to the business units. Because I think the other key thing innovation teams are good at is transferring efforts from the innovation team to the business unit. That's a common failure point when it comes to innovation efforts. Those teams that develop something up to a point and then throw it over the wall and hope it's successful often end up with a lot more failures than the ones that intertwine the business teams during the later phases of the innovation process, during the prototyping, piloting, and certainly at launch and scale. You need them there. But that's really how you ensure success when that initiative moves from innovation out into, the wild, so to speak.
What's adjacent innovation?
Adjacent innovation refers to existing customers, but different opportunities. So you think about that when it comes to insurance. Some examples, let's say on the home side, right? You think about home insurance is there after you have a loss. When you think about what's adjacent to home insurance, you start thinking about things like home maintenance. If we help people with home maintenance, then ultimately we should see fewer home losses, and that's just one example. That's where a lot of the loss mitigation technology comes in. Home monitoring is another example, right? There are home monitoring companies and companies that can proactively respond in times of need. That's an adjacent industry to home insurance. Mm-hmm. But when you look at innovation, those are kind of the three key areas. Core is current customers, current products. Adjacent is current customers, different products. And then breakthrough innovation is new customers, new products, or new markets and new product.
Are they all fun?
Some more fun than others, right? The incremental innovation, there's a lot more process there because there's a lot more people in the mix.
There's a lot more culture.
Yeah. Whereas the adjacent and the breakthrough, you want to have more separation from the core business to advance those ideas, because if you bring an adjacent idea or a breakthrough idea back into the core business too soon, it's more likely to fail.
So let's talk about innovation teams. And my question is, can innovation be outsourced? Should a company have an internal group on the innovation team, or should a company use outsource resources?
A consultant.
A consultant.
Using a consultant's always a good idea.
Do you know any?
Yeah, I might know a guy if you need one.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Yeah, no, I think I would say both, right? Good companies will have a mix of both internal and external innovation. And even AM Best in the criteria for ranking insurance companies, they recognize that sometimes you need outside resources to help. Where they can really help is, when they've got experience in adjacent markets or experience in certain technologies that you don't have internally, they can really help accelerate that process. I mean, Rob, you were talking about it last time, like reinventing the wheel. Everyone, that's the not invented here syndrome, right? If it's not invented here, we don't want it. But the reality is you can accelerate in some of these key areas of innovation. You can really accelerate by leveraging prior learnings and building upon those.
Mm-hmm. Which would be one of the reasons why you want to keep people around on the innovation team and not just have them cycling off, like you were saying. That library of knowledge that they keep in their heads has to be valuable as time goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you don't learn through experience. You learn by reflecting on your experience. That's where having that consistency and people that can remind you and say, hey, remember this thing that happened over here? Here's another thing related to it, right? And, having that consistent thread can be very powerful there when it comes to building on learnings.
So what's the hardest thing about running the team? You weren't just on the team, so you were a player coach, right?
Yeah, I would say some of the most challenging things for innovation teams to solve are really the political turf wars and some of the politics that happens behind the scenes.
Yeah,
sure. And you want to know what? I don't know that it matters what you do.
You're going to have that.
I mean, I work in an entirely different area than you do, and Lee works in an entirely different area than us do, and I think that that's probably true. Yes, Lee?
I would probably agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to like
universal
culture.
Yeah. And that has to circle back to what's going on at the C-level. If the C-level is fostering that or insisting on it or walking the walk, that probably greases the skids.
Yeah. And, when certain efforts are allowed to proceed in other areas, slowly, and then they start gaining steam rather than being run through the innovation team where they might be better suited, it just creates more and more of a divide.
So what makes you think, now I'm going to ask you a hard question, okay, Mr. Smart Pants?
Well, you've already asked a lot of hard questions here.
No, these are all softballs.
Just give me a softball.
When you sign up to be a podcaster, first question they ask you is going to be a hardball podcast or a softball podcast. Lee and I, softball podcast, powder puff.
All day long.
It's on a tee. There's not even a pitcher. The ball is put on a tee. And
you just throw it if you want to. It doesn't matter.
What makes you think that you can take that experience that you've just had, and of course, like we learned in your last episode, there's a lot of experience in your past, not just what you're doing, not what you've done the last 5 years, and take it out of working for a carrier, offer it in the industry, and that you can be helpful, valuable, et cetera. Why do that? And I'm not talking about personally, I'm talking about professionally. What made you say, you know what, I have something to offer to the industry?
I would say that it wasn't a conscious decision to do this from my perspective. Through a number of interesting developments and conversations, in the first 3 months here, I've spoken to over 40 different companies as a result of launching my business and just connecting with a lot of different people. And what I'm understanding from outside is that the perspective that I have is valued in other areas. And one of the things that I'm really good at is listening to how things are running and providing unique insights. Often people will say a consultant, he's going to steal your watch and then tell you what time it is. Um, you know, I have no intentions of doing that as much as, I've built up a big book of contacts, and my network is very strong, and I'm known for being straight up. And, that's what I think I can bring to the industry and bring to different startups and even to different insurance companies is just a pragmatic approach, learning by doing. And granted, my prior experiences with one company, I was in a number of different areas in that company, but there are so many other organizational styles and lines of business and go-to-market strategies for insurance companies. I need to learn a lot more than what I know right now, and this work really helps me start seeing some of those other opportunities and thinking about them differently. Sometimes a fresh perspective from someone with experience can be really helpful.
5 years ago in Insurtech, and I assume in innovation, I mean that when I say assume, because I don't know for sure. Everybody was kind of looking for the silver bullet, right? That this is the technology, the product, the company that's going to change everything, right? And disintermediate all these service providers and all this hand touching of everything, and it's coming, right? Well, here we are now, 5 years later. It's not. There is no silver bullet.
Yeah.
Things have changed. So things have changed a lot in innovation. I'm sure 5 years ago, the C-level was saying, hey, find the silver bullet. What's it like today? How's it different today? Because we've learned a lot. I mean,
the discussion 5 years ago was all about disruption, right? And how Insurtech is totally going to upset the apple cart, so to speak, when it comes to insurance. And there were a couple of, Insurtech carriers, focused carriers with new business models, new distribution strategies. And as those have played out over the past 5 years, on one hand, it's kind of given the incumbent carriers the opportunity to say, see, we told you so. There have been a couple of high-profile failures in the market. But again, that's given some of the incumbents the opportunity to say, see, we were on the right track from before. And what I would say is, where we are with Insurtech right now, it's about enabling carriers to be better at what they do. And, either by providing new sources of data that can help from a risk selection perspective, by providing new distribution strategies, to sell their products to new audiences in a streamlined way. I think Insurtech, where it's going to go in the future, especially in such a hard market, I think optimization and efficiency, any Insurtech that's focused on that, is going to be someone that an insurance company is going to want. Certainly loss mitigation is a big thing right now when it comes to a hard market, and inflation being what it is, and just the challenges with getting homes and cars repaired. Mitigating the losses ahead of time, it's an important trend. I mean, I think the key is really the enabling Insurtechs that can help carriers be more effective.
That give you a better tool belt as opposed to new tool belt.
Right. There's been plenty of examples now to point to. It's not like tech, right, where you start up a tech company and it's all about growth. And it doesn't matter if you're not profitable if you keep growing. You can't do that in insurance.
Right.
And it's like what you said, the incumbents had an inherent advantage, and beside their existing book of business. And that is, they've been doing this for a really long time. They understand, and something as complicated as insurance. Now, insurance isn't brain surgery. But if you ever take a minute to go look at your insurance policy that's sitting in a drawer somewhere in your house, it's very complicated. And so they had a distinct advantage.
But you know what? I think one of the key things with insurance is the law of large numbers. that's one area that's very difficult to disrupt as a newcomer coming in. The principles, the very foundation of insurance is spreading risk over a large pool. It's very difficult to do that as a startup insurance carrier.
Yep.
Where you don't have that risk to really spread out.
Yeah. Right. And to be competitive.
Right.
And that's why these cyber guys are making it, because they're brand new, right?
Yeah.
They're in a line that they're not competing with the incumbents or other things like that.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to find you, they'd find you how?
Primarily at this point on LinkedIn, I'm still somewhat in stealth mode. I will have a website up at some point, but LinkedIn, or they can always email me, adam@insurtechinnovations.com.
Number one, we love you. I don't care what anyone else says. Okay.
I don't care what Rob says, but we do.
Number two, it's such a privilege to have you on our podcast, because I'm going to say there's 25 times in a year where your name comes up in a conversation that Lee and I are having. 25 times, is that right,
Wow.
Lee?
Yeah, I would think so.
Like twice a month. Wow.
Yeah.
Lee's holding up two fingers. I don't know why.
Yeah, twice a month.
Okay.
Hopefully, at least half of them are in a good context.
Well,
is that important?
75%, 75% one way or the other.
And three, we're only being nice to you because we want to have a room like the one that you're sitting in at our house, and we figure if we kiss your, behind
someday, these consulting gigs are going to dry up, and then I can build you some cabinets or whatever.
Okay. All right. Okay.
No, I really appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome, and it's been great to see you guys along the journey as well.
Absolutely, and we can't wait to see you out there in the real world in 2023.
Yeah, definitely. You'll see me.
Okay. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you guys too.
Thanks, Adam.
We were just talking offline about Adam and what an interesting cat he is.
Yeah.
Very interesting. The man can build anything. He can construct anything. He can deconstruct everything. I mean, he has a whole long list of talents that are perfectly appointed for this new idea that he's entering into.
This new world that he's starting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he can look at a very multifaceted problem and figure it out. That's a pretty cool talent.
I think he'll be very successful at this new role.
Plus, he understands where the problems and the hitch points typically are, which is really valuable. I loved what he said about consultants.
Yeah.
They'll take your watch and they'll tell you what time it is.
We talked to him for 40, 50 minutes. And it was the insight. He knows the inner working. He knows the world. Yeah. He's going to have great success. And we're so fortunate. We had 2 podcasts with him. We were very lucky to get a couple hours with him.
So this is one of our last, if not our last podcasts of the year. And even though that's probably not when you'll hear it, but we want to say Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy whatever your holiday may be, Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Best wishes to Alicia Moss, our intrepid producer. Also now are doing the recording today.
Yeah, start and stop her today.
Al Moya, who isn't here today, is on vacation.
He's
you,
on
Al.
a very needed vacation.
Thank you, Al. Lee Boyd, thank you.
Thank you,
Who
Rob.
else do we have to thank? Jim Pearl, John
Jim
Hall,
Pearl.
Randy Thornton,
Right.
for letting us do this crazy thing all the time.
Chipper Jabber.
And who else do we have to thank, Lee?
Well, we want to thank our spouses and our second grade teacher for believing in us. Not the third grade teacher.
My
who told
second
me I was
grade
gonna be a
teacher was
failure.
Mrs. Schneider. She was mean. She was mean.
I think I had Miss Pearson. But it was my third grade teacher who told me I'll never make it in life because I didn't color in the lines. You will be a failure.
Wow. I had that.
Boy,
that
was
was
she right.
That was my sixth grade teacher that did that.
Everyone has one. She was awful.
My sixth grade teacher told me I'd be in jail.
I remember that story.
Mm-hmm.
You must have been really bad.
Dude, I mean, I'm a sixth grader and my teacher's in front of the whole class says that.
You're going to be in jail. Might just call me a failure.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ruin my life.
He said that I know from how you kids are today what your future holds. And he went around the room. Then he came to me, a couple of people. And then he came to me, like Beller, for example. He's going to be in jail.
There's still time. Or is there a past I don't know about?
I don't know. Google it.
There's
Google it.
time.
Google it. Okay, well, listen, thank you all. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah,
Happy New Year.
Kwanzaa, etc. And best wishes for a great 2023. And until then,
Goodbye, everybody.